האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Good evening, Erev Tov, Dober V'Yetzer. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Va'era, and we are in Os Aleph, section number 1. It's a small section, short but powerful. Before we begin, we're going to take a look at one pasuk from the end of last week's Parsha, Parsha Shmos, and then a few psukim from the beginning of our Parsha, Parshas Va'era. Here's the pasuk from Parsha Shmos. This is Perek Hey, pasuk Chaf Beis. Vayoshav Moshe el Hashem, and Moshe returned to Hashem, Vayomar, and he said, Hashem, God, Lama hare osa la'am hazeh, why have you done bad to this people? Lama zeh shelachtani, why did you send me? So that pasuk, to understand the context of it, Moshe, of course, was sent on his mission to take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, and he assumed that when he came with Hashem's help, of course, obviously, he would tell Paro, let the Jewish people go, and Paro would let the Jewish people go. However, the opposite happened. Paro worsened the servitude. Paro, as we know the famous story, took away the straw that had been given to the slaves, the Jewish slaves, to make bricks. The straw was a part of the straw, and clay was a part of the brick making process. And he took away the straw, so they had to work even harder. And so, of course, they were very bitter, and they complained to Moshe and Aaron. So Moshe turned to Hashem and said, Lama hariosalam hazeh. You're not rescuing the people, you're making it worse for them. That's bad. And that's at the end of last week's Parsha. Now, let's take a look to the first three psukim in our Parsha, Parshas Va'era. Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, Vayomer Elav, and he said to him, Ani Hashem. I am God, I am Hashem, and he used the four-letter name of Hashem, the Yud, and the Hey, and the Vav, and the Hey. Va'era el Avraham, and I appeared to Avraham, el Yitzchak, to Yitzchak, ve'el Yaakov, and to Yaakov, be'kel Shakai, with the name of Hashem, kel Shakai. Ushmi Hashem, and my four-letter name of Hashem, the aforementioned Yud, and a Hey, and a Vav, and a Hey, lo nodati lohem, I did not make known to them. So Hashem is telling Moshe, I am Hashem, and I'm using my four-letter name of Hashem when I say that to you. But to the Avos, to the patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, when I appeared to them and promised them the land, I appeared using a different name, Kel Shakai. Next pasuk, V'gam hakimosi es brisi itam, and I also established my covenant with them, Loseis lohem es eretz Canaan, to give to them the land of Canaan, es eretz megurehem, the land of their sojournings, asher goru va, that they sojourned in it. So there's a lot going on in these psukim, and the focus appears to be, the focus that Hashem is talking to Moshe, discussing with Moshe, is these different names, the four-letter name of Hashem and the name Kel Shakai, which we don't generally pronounce unless we're reading a pasuk in its entirety, because that is a name of Hashem. And so we'll see the Zera Shimshon is going to delve into what do these names mean and what was Hashem trying to communicate to Moshe when he distinguished between the four-letter name of Hashem that he was using with Moshe now, but the name Kel Shakai that he used with the patriarchs previously. Os Aleph, section number 1 in the Zera Shimshon, pasuk. The pasuk says, Va'era el Avraham, and I appeared to Avraham, v'chule, etc. Perish Rashi. Rashi explains, Hiv tachtim havtachos, I made promises to them, meaning to the patriarchs. Uvechulam amarti lahem, and in all of them I said, Ani Kel Shakai, I am God, but using the name, as you can see, the two words, Kel Shakai. let's pause here because Zera Shimshon only quotes a little snippet from Rashi, but to understand what Rashi is saying, or at least the way Rashi is generally understood, we need to step away and to explain that. The Zera Shimshon doesn't bring the complete comment of Rashi here on the pasuk. So if we look at the Rashi, the way that Rashi, the way he's generally understood is what he says is he's rebuking Moshe because Moshe questioned Hashem at the end of the previous Parsha, at the end of Parsha Shmos, and said, "Why are you doing bad to the people? Why are you making things worse?" Hashem did not feel that was an appropriate comment. So he said to Moshe, "You know, the patriarch, you're different than the patriarchs, and not in a good way. When I spoke to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I used the name Kel Shakai, which is the name that I use to make promises that I am not going to fulfill at the time. And that's the name I gave them. I told them I would give them the land of Canaan, but during their lifetimes, they never owned the land of Canaan. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov trusted in Hashem that at a future point, he would give the land of Canaan to their descendants, but they themselves were always strangers in the land. They were foreigners in the land. They did not own Eretz Canaan. Eretz Canaan during their lifetimes was owned by the Canaanim, the Canaanites, and other peoples. So Hashem was saying to Moshe, I used the name with the patriarchs and didn't fulfill my promises, but they trusted me. Meanwhile, I used the name, I'm using the name, the four-letter name, the Yud and the Hey, and the Vav and the Hey with you, which is the name that signals I am keeping my promises, but you're not trusting me like the patriarchs did. You're already questioning me and asking, Lama Hareosa, why have you done something bad to this people? So according to Rashi, again, according to the way Rashi's comments are generally understood, that was the rebuke that Hashem was communicating to Moshe. But as we're going to see in this piece, based on a commentary on Rashi, what we call a super commentary of the Re'im, Rabbeinu Eliyahu Mizrahi, Zera Shimshon is going to give us a new understanding of Rashi's comments. So let's move right ahead. Ufeiresh ha-Re'im. And the Re'im, again, Rabbeinu Eliyahu Mizrahi explains, Shehachiluk, that the difference, sheyesh bein, that there is between havtochas kel shakai lehavtochas shem havoya, the difference between a promise that Hashem makes using the name kel shakai versus a promise that Hashem makes using the four-letter name, the shem havaya, hainu, it is shahavtochas shem havoya, a promise made with the four-letter name of Hashem, miskayemes, will be fulfilled. I'll call upon him no matter what. Bein chotu, bein lo chotu. Whether or not the recipient or recipients of that promise sin afterwards or do not sin. That means it's an unconditional promise, a promise made by Hashem, using Hashem's name, Shem Havaya, the four-letter name of Hashem, will be fulfilled whether or not afterwards the people are worthy of it and have maintained their righteousness, or bein chotu, or whether or not they have sinned afterwards, the promise will be fulfilled. Ve'hahavtocha im kel shakai, but a promise made using the name kel shakai, eina miskayemes, is not necessarily going to be fulfilled, rak bisnai, only on the condition shelo yechetu, that the people, that the person, the individual, or the people who receive the promise do not sin. If they sin, it could cause the promise made by Hashem with the name Kel Shakai not to be fulfilled. So the commentary, the Mizrahi commentary, explains the difference, the general difference throughout the Torah when we see a promise made using the four-letter name of Hashem, which is unconditional, and the name Kel Shakai, which can be conditional and not necessarily come to fruition. Ve'af al pi shehivtachti v'chulei, even though I made promises to the patriarchs, to the avos, with the name Kel Shakai, afal pichein, even so, even though I used that name, mechuyav ani lekayim osa hahavtacha. I am obligated to fulfill the promise. Lefi shehoyasa havtacha im habris, because it was a promise made as part or along with a covenant, a bris. And we saw that pasuk where Hashem said, "V'gam hakimosi es brisi," and I also established my covenant with the avos. So the Mizrahi is telling us something very important, that a promise made in general with Hashem's name of Kel Shakai is somewhat conditional, is conditional on how the people act afterwards. And it could not be, it's possible that it won't be fulfilled if the people commit chatoyim afterwards. However, a promise made with Kel Shakai that's combined with a bris, a covenant, Hashem must fulfill it unconditionally. So that's an important statement, an important commentary made by the Re'im, by Rabbeinu Eliyahu Mizrahi. But as we'll see, it's problematic, but ultimately will lead to an entirely new understanding of Rashi's comments and to the psukim that we read. Next paragraph. The kosher tuva, it's very problematic. Meaning this additional explanation of the Re'im causes a problem. The im havtacha bekel shakai im habris, if, as the Re'im just taught us, a promise made by Hashem using the name Kel Shakai along with a bris, a covenant, mo'eles, is effective af im yechetu, even if the people sin, if that's the way it works, koch HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then Hashem should have been able la'asos im ha'avos, to make with the patriarchs ha'havtacha b'shem havoya, a promises using the four-letter name of Hashem. Meaning, if a promise with the name of Hashem, Kel Shakai, as long as it's combined with a bris, a covenant, is as powerful and unconditional as a promise with the Shem Havaya, then why did Hashem make promises to the Avos with Kel Shakai and not with the unconditional name Shem Havaya, the four-letter name of Hashem? If after all, the promises Hashem made to the patriarchs were unconditional because they were combining a combination of the name Kel Shakai with a bris, with a covenant, which makes them unconditional, then why didn't Hashem just use the four-letter name of Hashem, of the four-letter name Shem Havaya, which right off the bat in all cases would have been unconditional? Ve'od, and another question, ma tochocha hizo leMoshe. What rebuke was being given to Moshe by Hashem? Halo havtocha zo, is it not true that this promise, hainu kemo havtocha Shem Havaya, is similar to, operates similarly to, a promise using the four-letter name of Hashem? In other words, the way we understood Rashi before the Zera Shimshon introduced the commentary of the Mizrahi, of the Re'im, was that Hashem was rebuking Moshe and saying, Moshe, why are you questioning me? The Avos didn't question me, and I gave a weaker promise to them. I promised the Avos, the patriarchs, that they would receive Eretz Canaan to be their own land and completely own it, even though that's not what happened during their lifetimes, but they trusted me. Whereas with taking the Jewish people, taking Am Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, I'm using Shem Havaya, the four-letter name of Hashem, which is completely unconditional. It has to happen no matter how the people act. And therefore, but you're still questioning and not trusting me totally. That's how we understood it before. But now that the Re'im has taught us a new concept, that the name Kel Shakai, along with the covenant, becomes unconditional and apparently equal and equivalent to the Shem Havaya, a promise made using the four-letter name of Hashem. Why didn't Hashem use it? That was question one. And two, what kind of rebuke now? How are we understanding the rebuke that Hashem was apparently giving to Moshe? So the Zera Shimshon is now going in the next paragraph to answer those two questions and help us understand the psukim and the Rashi in a new way, in a new light. V'nireh, and it would appear, shezohi kavonas hapasuk, that this is the intention of the pasuk. Ata omarta loma hareyosa. Hashem says to Moshe, you said to me at the end of Shemos, last week's Parsha, why have I done something bad to the people? Why have I made it so that now their servitude is worse and they aren't receiving straw? Why, Hashem, why did you do that? That's what Moshe said. V'lo hevanta, and you did not understand. She'ani hiftachti la'avos bekel shakai. I made promises to the forefathers, the patriarchs, with the name of Hashem, Kel Shakai, im habris, with a covenant, with a bris, the hainu kemo havtacha shem havaya, which is equivalent and equal to making a promise to the patriarchs with the four-letter name of Hashem. V'loma ushmi Hashem lo nodati lahem, and Moshe, you needed to delve into a question of why I did not use the four-letter name of Hashem when I made myself known and made promises to the Avos. Why didn't? Why did I use the name Kel Shakai if I was going to combine it with a bris, which makes it equal to the four-letter name of Hashem? So Moshe, think about it. Delve into it now. Why didn't I use the Shem Havaya? Im Hakol Echad, if it's all the same thing. Elavadai, but definitely this is Hashem communicating to Moshe, definitely mipnei sheshem shakai, because the name of Kel Shakai, More al Hadin, teaches us about Hashem's attribute of justice, Dahainu, which is Misha Omar La'olam Dai, the one who said to the world, it's enough, and we'll explain that in a moment. Yomar Litzaro Sehem Dai, will say to the tsaros, to the suffering of the Jewish people, die, enough. At the time of Brias HaOlam, at the time of the creation of the world, Hashem, of course, was capable for the creation to go on and on and on. There was no need from Hashem's perspective to stop the Brias HaOlam, the creation of the world, after 6 days and then rest. Hashem could have continued to create and create and create and expand the creation indefinitely, infinitely, without any stoppage, without any cessation. And so the name Kel Shakai is connected to the word die, enough. And Hashem, when he created the world, at a certain point said, die. That's it. I have created the world, and I'm not going to continue at this point making more and more creations in this world. And so if Hashem has the ability to do that, to stop the creations, Hashem also has the ability, of course, to stop the suffering of the Jewish people. Ve'im kain, and if so, nira mikan, it would appear from here, shekodem shetiskayim hahavtacha, that before Hashem's promise would be fulfilled, yesh lahem lisbol tsaros, the Jewish people are going to have to experience suffering. Ve'ata amarta, and you, Moshe, you missed this whole lesson, and you said, Lama hareyoso, why are you doing something bad to the people? Let's now explain what the Zera Shimshon is teaching us here in the last paragraph, where he's putting everything together. Hashem wanted Moshe to realize that he made a very important choice. He, meaning Hashem, made a very important choice when he promised the land of Canaan to the Avos, to the forefathers, using the name Kel Shakai, as opposed to the name, the four-letter name, the Shem Havaya. Why would Hashem choose Kel Shakai along with a covenant instead of the Shem Havaya if both of those methods of making a promise are equivalent. Answer, because the name Shakai is a name that reflects Hashem's Midas Hadin, Hashem's attribute of justice, and he was judging the people, and that is why suffering came to the people. The servitude was a type of suffering. Taking away the straw was a type of suffering. And Hashem wanted Moshe to realize, Moshe, don't you know I've made these promises Bekel Shakai instead of the Shem Havaya, and therefore that suffering is part and parcel of the promise. It's something, unfortunately, the Jewish people have to experience in Mitzrayim, and therefore your question really has no basis, Moshe. You ask, Lama Hareosa, why am I doing something bad to the people? Obviously, the people have been suffering in slavery, and their slavery has now gotten a little worse. Their suffering has increased, but that is part of what I told the Avos in the beginning when I made the promises to them, Bekel Shakai, with the name Kel Shakai. Suffering would be part of the Jewish people's experience until they would be redeemed. Now, Moshe, is the time of their redemption, when you're going to come and you're going to fulfill the promises and stop the suffering, stop the slavery, and bring them out through the Yetzias Mitzrayim, through the process of the Exodus from Egypt. Yashar Koch for joining us in the Zera Shimshon learning on this week's Parsha, Parsha's Va'era. We look forward, Bezras Hashem, learning together in the Zera Shimshon next week.